The desert breathes with an ancient rhythm. Wind dances over dunes like whispers of time itself, stirring grains of sand that have buried and unburied entire civilizations. As the sun bleeds into the horizon, the earth begins to reveal its scars, mounds, not random but deliberate, rising from the dust like tombstones of forgotten grandeur. Somewhere beneath them lies Kalibangan, a ghost city that shouldn't exist, yet does. Beneath your feet, civilizations lie stacked in silence, layers of triumph, of ruin, of memory. But what if one of those layers doesn't fit the story we've been telling about ourselves? What if, 4,500 years ago, a people lived who understood the world in ways that still elude us? Here, on the arid plains of Rajasthan, archaeologists uncovered something that defied expectation. A city perfectly laid out on a grid long before the Romans engineered their roads, before Greece dreamt of order and geometry. Streets run with unsettling precision. Fire altars, carefully aligned in rows, still bear traces of ritual ash. And nearby, frozen in hardened earth, lies the world's oldest known plowed field, its furrows straight as though traced by a divine hand. Then there are the seals, tiny, intricate, carved with animal motifs and a script no one has ever deciphered. Their meaning taunts us from across millennia, a language that refuses to surrender its voice. What did they record? Trade, prayers, laws, or something deeper, a cosmic code now lost to time? Kalibangan isn't merely another chapter in the Indus Valley story. It is the anomaly that rewrites the entire book. Its architecture, its rituals, even its silences suggest a civilization far more complex and far more self-aware than we imagined. And yet, it ended. Abruptly, as though the city, at the height of its order, simply stopped breathing. Why? What unseen catastrophe forced its people to abandon their sacred fires, their ordered streets, their language of stone and symbol? As the camera lifts above the excavation site, the patterns of the city emerge like a map of the human mind itself. Structured, beautiful, fragile, the desert swallows the horizon, and a single question echoes through the wind. What if the ghosts of Kalibangan aren't gone at all, just waiting for us to finally listen? From the windswept sands of Kalibangan, the camera pulls back, slowly, majestically, revealing a vast and intricate web of cities stretching across an ancient world. What emerges is not a single site, but an empire of astonishing coherence. The Indus Valley Civilization, around 2600 BCE, while pharaohs raised pyramids to pierce the heavens and Mesopotamian kings inscribed their victories on clay, another world flourished in quiet brilliance, one that built not for glory, but for harmony. At its height, this civilization sprawled across nearly 1 million square kilometers, larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. From the baked plains of Sindh to the foothills of the Himalayas, from the Makran coast to the deserts of Rajasthan, its cities pulsed with life and order. Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, Dholavira, Kalibangan, names that once meant bustling streets, marketplaces humming with trade, and neighborhoods aligned so precisely they could only have been designed by minds attuned to both practicality and beauty. And yet, there were no kings here. No grand palaces, no warrior statues, no hieroglyphs extolling divine rulers. The Indus people seemed to reject hierarchy as the organizing principle of civilization. Instead, they built societies where standardization was the ultimate expression of unity. Identical bricks, identical weights, identical measures, repeated across hundreds of kilometers as though guided by an invisible hand. Their cities were not random clusters of dwellings, but deliberate designs, grids intersected by broad avenues, equipped with complex drainage systems centuries ahead of their time. Each home had access to clean water, each street to sanitation. This was not the chaos of conquest, but the precision of community. Civilization, in its purest form, organized not by force, but by shared understanding. Kalibangan stood at the civilization's edge, perched along the banks of the now-vanished Gagar-Hakra River, believed by many to be the lost Sarasvati of ancient hymns. Its location was no accident. It was the vital link between the heartland and the trade arteries reaching toward Mesopotamia and Central Asia. From here flowed copper, beads, and textiles. From the west came tin, lapis, and whispered stories of distant lands. And yet the people who achieved all this to remain voiceless. Their script, etched into tiny steatite seals, refuses to yield its meaning. Their art speaks in silence, the haunting eyes of terracotta figurines, the rhythmic geometry of pottery, the unspoken reverence in fire altars and wells. They built no temples for gods, no monuments to conquest, no tombs for emperors. They left behind not the echo of power, but of peace. For nearly 1,000 years, the Indus Valley Civilization thrived, a masterpiece of stability in an age defined by war and empire. Then, as suddenly as it rose, it began to fade. Drought, shifting rivers, or something else entirely. No one knows. But Kalibangan endures, its buried streets holding fragments of an idea too advanced, too human, to fit neatly into our familiar story of history. In its quiet ruins lies a challenge, to see civilization not as the triumph of rulers, but as the triumph of order, cooperation, and imagination itself. Kalibangan has always defied explanation. From the moment it emerged from the sands in 1953, this ancient city began rewriting everything we thought we knew about the Indus Valley Civilization. It doesn't fit the pattern. It doesn't play by the rules. And perhaps that's why it haunts archaeologists even now, because Kalibangan feels less like a chapter in the Indus story and more like a riddle carved into stone. The first anomaly lies at its spiritual core. Scattered across the citadel are rows of carefully constructed fire altars, the earliest known in the world, set out with geometric precision, each pit mirroring the others in shape, alignment, and dimension. These weren't household hearths for daily cooking. They were ceremonial instruments designed for ritual fire. Their arrangement suggests a pattern, astronomical, perhaps even mathematical, hinting that the people of Kalibangan worshipped through flame, through light, through celestial order. The altars stand aligned as though reflecting constellations, evidence of a society whose spirituality was bound to the rhythm of the sky. And yet, no other Indus site places fire worship at such a central, architectural scale. It is as if Kalibangan was both part of the Indus world and somehow apart from it, an outpost of a faith we no longer understand. Then there's the field. Beneath one excavation trench, archaeologists uncovered something almost impossible. The faint imprint of a plowed field, preserved in hardened soil, 4,500 years old. The intersecting furrows form a perfect grid, evidence of an agricultural system that was not random but deliberate, measured, methodical. Each line reveals intention, each cross-furrow, design. What crops once filled this earth before the desert claimed it? Wheat, barley, pulses. And how did they farm in a climate that would now kill anything that tried to grow? The field is both a triumph of preservation and a question frozen in time, offering a glimpse of agricultural genius we barely comprehend. But Kalibangan's builders were not only priests and farmers, they were also architects of defense. The city's walls are massive, layered, and unusually complex. Unlike other Indus centers, Kalibangan's fortifications divide the settlement into a sharply defined citadel and lower town, as though preparing for danger or enforcing sacred separation. Was this a frontier settlement guarding the civilization's edge, or a sanctuary protecting something more metaphysical than military, a sacred fire, a body of knowledge, a ritual center insulated from the outside world? Even its artifacts tell stories that resist translation. Pottery from Kalibangan bursts with energy, bold animal motifs unlike the more restrained designs of Harappa or Mohenjo-Daro. Bulls charge across clay surfaces, mythical creatures twist in motion. Terracotta cakes, mysterious, stamped, and abundant, bear symbols no one can explain. Were they accounting tokens, ritual offerings, or something in between? Each discovery seems to deepen the mystery rather than resolve it. And then comes the final twist, evidence of not one city, but two. Beneath the layers of Kalibangan lies another settlement, older, simpler, and abruptly abandoned. Later the site was rebuilt with new structures, new rituals, and a new identity. What happened in between remains unknown. Flood, earthquake, drought, or something more human, a migration, a transformation, a rebirth. The earth keeps its silence. Every excavation uncovers fragments, ritual altars, furrowed fields, fortified walls, but they refuse to join into a single narrative. Kalibangan doesn't tell one story. It whispers several, all overlapping, all incomplete. It is a paradox, a city that shows us both the peak of human order and the fragility beneath it, a civilization that seemed to master fire, earth, and water, yet vanished into dust without a trace of why. Kalibangan doesn't make sense, and maybe that's the point. Some mysteries aren't meant to close neatly. They are meant to remind us that even in the most advanced civilizations, there are truths the desert still keeps for itself. The first time the winds of Rajasthan swept across the mounds of Kalibangan in the 1950s, they carried whispers of something extraordinary buried beneath. Local villagers had long known of the strange shapes in the desert, the fragments of pottery surfacing after every storm, the occasional brick jutting from the dunes, but it wasn't empty until early surface surveys confirmed their suspicions that archaeologists began to grasp the magnitude of what slept below. This was no mere settlement. It was a lost city. In the years that followed, two pioneers, Bibilal and B.K. Thapar, took on the task of uncovering it. Between 1961 and 1969, their teams labored through brutal heat and blinding dust, wielding not shovels of conquest, but tools of precision. Each trench, each grid square, was a time capsule to be opened with care. Under the blazing Rajasthan sun, they divided the mound into a checkerboard of excavation units, mapping every coordinate with meticulous discipline. Stratigraphy was their compass, the art of reading the layers of earth as pages of a buried book. The work was slow, almost reverent. A trowel here, a brushstroke there. Centuries peeled away like onion skin, revealing the faint outlines of walls, hearths, and platforms. Every object, no matter how small, was a clue in a grand investigation. Pottery sherds, some coarse and practical, others delicately painted, hinted at daily rhythms and artistic taste. Beads of carnelian and shell spoke of far-reaching trade networks. A child's clay rattle, uncovered after 4,000 years, echoed laughter long turned to dust, and in the stillness of the trench, a single broken bangle gleamed like a pulse of memory, evidence of personal adornment, of touch, of human intimacy preserved in silence. To excavate is to resurrect. Each artifact pulled from the earth breathes life back into people who no longer have voices. A seal with undeciphered script becomes a conversation between the living and the vanished. A simple toy becomes a bridge across millennia. Archaeology, at its heart, is not about things. It's about the stories those things allow us to hear again. But Kalibangan posed unique challenges. The desert was merciless, eroding walls faster than they could be documented. Funding was scarce, equipment limited, and each season's window for digging was brutally short. The archaeologists worked not only against time, but against nature itself. And always, there was the awareness that this wasn't just science. It was heritage. The soil beneath their feet belonged not merely to the past, but to the people still living nearby, for whom these ruins carried ancestral weight and identity. Even after years of excavation, vast stretches of Kalibangan remain untouched. The team mapped what they could, recorded what they must, and then covered much of it again to protect it from the very air that might destroy it. What lies below those unexcavated mounds? More altars, more homes, perhaps the key to the Indus script itself? For now, the city keeps its silence. Its buried streets sleep beneath the sand, waiting for a new generation of archaeologists armed with fresh eyes, sharper tools, and a deeper sense of wonder, to finish the conversation that began more than 60 years ago. 4,500 years ago, when most of humanity still lived in scattered villages, tending fields and herding animals beneath open skies, something extraordinary was taking shape on the banks of the Gagarhakra River. Here, at Kalibangan, people were not merely surviving. They were planning, designing, building. They were imagining a city into existence. From the first trench, the scale of their ambition became clear. Streets stretched in perfect alignment with the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, forming a geometric order that feels almost modern in its precision. The city wasn't a haphazard cluster of huts. It was a meticulously organized grid. Each residential block followed standardized dimensions, as if drawn from a shared blueprint that governed all Indus Valley cities. Beneath the surface, a labyrinth of drains and sewers ran like arteries, connecting every household to a greater system that channeled wastewater into covered conduits of baked brick. Even the smallest homes had bathing platforms and wells. Hygiene, order, and engineering were woven into daily life, as natural to them as breathing. The bricks themselves tell the story of astonishing discipline. Across the entire Indus world, from Harappa to Dholavira, their ratio remained constant, 4:2:1. It's a small detail, yet it speaks volumes. To achieve such uniformity across thousands of kilometers requires not only knowledge, but governance. A shared system of weights, measures, and regulations, urban codes that ensured every wall, every drain, every structure fit into a grand civic harmony. And remarkably, this unity was achieved without evidence of kings, armies, or monumental decrees. There were no palaces dictating from above, no statues of rulers carved in stone. The Indus achievement, embodied in Kalibangan, was one of coordination without coercion, a civilization guided by consensus, not conquest. At the city's heart stood the citadel, an elevated complex separated from the lower town by formidable fortification walls. This upper sector, likely administrative and ceremonial, required staggering manpower to construct. Massive mud brick ramparts, reinforced over generations, guarded it from floods or perhaps symbolic intrusion. Below, the lower town spread in quiet symmetry, lined with rows of multi-room houses centered around open courtyards. Wells dotted every block, some shared among neighbors, others private. Each one a testament to the people's reverence for water and their mastery of managing it in an unforgiving climate. Imagine walking through Kalibangan at its zenith. The air hums with life. Merchants display pottery painted in ochre and black, while artisans craft delicate beads from carnelian and shell. Children chase clay carts along sunlit streets. From the citadel, the faint glow of sacred fires flickers against the dusk. Bullock carts creak under the weight of copper ingots and exotic stones brought from distant lands. Conversations rise and fall, mingling with the rhythmic sound of hammer against stone, the murmur of trade, the quiet pulse of civilization itself. This was no primitive outpost. It was a city in every sense, deliberate, organized, self-sustaining. Its people had mastered agriculture, sanitation, and architecture. They had created surplus, developed craftsmanship, and lived in communities shaped by mutual trust and ritual continuity. Kalibangan stood as a testament to humanity, as first great experiment in collective order, the moment we began to build not just for survival, but for meaning. They built as though their city would last forever, and for a time it did. But beneath the shifting sands of Rajasthan, their certainty turned to silence. The streets that once rang with life now lie buried, their language unreadable, their names forgotten. Yet in every brick, in every measured street, the dream of permanence endures, a quiet reminder that civilization was not born of conquest, but of creation. When archaeologists first brushed the sand away from Kalibangan's citadel, they didn't expect to uncover a temple or anything resembling one. The Indus Valley Civilization, after all, had always been defined by its pragmatism, cities of order and water, not gods and altars. But then, from the dust, the outlines began to emerge. 7 raised platforms in perfect alignment, each containing a carefully built fire pit, blackened by centuries of ash. It wasn't a random arrangement. The geometry was deliberate, the design intentional. Something profound had taken place here long ago. The altars themselves were made of brick, symmetrically constructed and oriented with mathematical precision. Around them lay layers of terracotta cakes, fragments of pottery, and the faint remains of animal bones, evidence, perhaps, of ritual offerings. The ashes were not from a single event, but from repeated use. The same fires had been kindled, extinguished, and rekindled over generations, as though sustaining a flame that connected the living with something eternal. These were not crude hearths for cooking. They were ceremonial spaces. Yet what kind of ceremony requires such order, such permanence, such fire? Why here, and only here, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, grander and wealthier cities, lack anything comparable. Kalibangan alone seems consumed by fire's symbolism. Some scholars have looked to the Vedas for clues, seeing in these altars the earliest echoes of yajna, the ritual fire offerings that would later become central to Hindu religious life. The alignment of the altars, the use of ash, even the placement of offerings seem hauntingly familiar. Could this be the spiritual ancestor of India's millennia-long reverence for fire as purifier, witness, and divine messenger? If so, Kalibangan may represent not just a city, but the cradle of a sacred tradition that survived the fall of the Indus world itself. Others resist the idea. They argue that we're projecting modern religious frameworks backward onto prehistory. Perhaps these were kilns or communal ovens, or installations for metal or pottery work. Yet even the most cautious interpretations stumble on the same detail: the symmetry. No utilitarian facility needs such precision, such repetition. Whatever these structures meant, they were designed for something more than function. They were meant to mean. Around the altars, archaeologists found other tantalizing traces of ritual life. Terracotta figurines, some human, some animal, some so abstract they defy identification. Were these gods? Worshippers? Symbols? Cylinder seals etched with mysterious motifs, trees, horns, circles, may have served as amulets or tokens in rites we can no longer name. Pathways between structures suggest movement, perhaps processions, perhaps ritual journeys taken under the desert stars as sacred fires flickered in rhythmic unison. Religion, at its heart, is the human urge to reach beyond what can be seen, to light a flame in the darkness and call it divine. In Kalibangan, that urge burned literally, contained in brick, sustained by ritual, witnessed by a sky they believed was listening. But we will never truly know what those fires meant to the people who tended them. The altars remain among the clearest windows into Indus spirituality, and yet they blind us with their opacity. They whisper of belief, but their language is lost. Archaeology can reveal the ashes, the bones, the geometry of devotion, but not the prayers that once rose with the smoke. And so, the fires of Kalibangan burn still, not in brick or ash, but in our imagination, eternal, unanswered, and hauntingly alive. It was a discovery so improbable that even seasoned archaeologists paused in disbelief. Beneath the ancient streets of Kalibangan, under layers of habitation, brick, and time, they found a field. Not a metaphorical one, but an actual plowed field, its furrows preserved in hardened soil for nearly 5 millennia. It was as though the earth had frozen a moment of human labor, capturing the mark of a farmer's hand from 2900 BCE. The furrows ran with striking precision, forming a crisscrossing pattern, one set aligned east to west, the other north to south. The geometry was not random. It revealed a deliberate system, perhaps for growing 2 different crops side by side, one needing more sunlight, the other more shade, or for rotating crops to keep the soil fertile. It was the earliest known evidence of plowed agriculture in the Indian subcontinent, proof that these people were not primitive subsistence farmers, but master planners of their landscape. Yet what made the discovery even more astonishing was where it was found. Today, Kalibangan lies in a semi-arid desert, its horizon defined by sand dunes and dry scrub. Rainfall is erratic, vegetation sparse, and the idea of sustaining fields here feels almost absurd. But 4,500 years ago, this was no desert. It was fertile, green, alive. Something, somewhere, had changed. That change leads to one of the greatest environmental enigmas in South Asian archaeology, the mystery of the vanished river. The Gagar Hakra, now a seasonal stream that fades into dust, once flowed mightily through this region. Geological studies suggest it was a perennial river, fed by glacial melt from the Himalayas, perhaps the very river ancient hymns later called the Sarasvati. Along its banks flourished a chain of cities, Harappa, Banawali, Kalibangan, all part of a civilization sustained by its abundance. But the river's fate mirrors the civilization's own. Over centuries, tectonic shifts, changing monsoon patterns, or the redirection of Himalayan glacial waters slowly strangled its flow. What was once a lifeline became a ghost, and as it died, so too did the settlements that depended on it. Kalibangan's fields, once orderly and thriving, became dry lines etched into desolation, a perfect fossil of human ambition overtaken by nature's indifference. Those ancient furrows are more than an archaeological curiosity. They are symbols of faith in the land, of generations who trusted the seasons to return, who bent their backs to cultivate life from the soil. They could not have imagined that their careful geometry, their science, their toil, would one day be entombed beneath the sand. Kalibangan's ploughed field is a time capsule of both triumph and tragedy, a testament to human ingenuity and a warning of nature's impermanence. It reminds us that even the most advanced civilizations stand on fragile ground. Climate shifts silently, rivers change course, and the world that sustains us can turn unrecognizable within a lifetime. In the furrows of Kalibangan lies not only the story of a lost harvest, but the echo of a truth as old as civilization itself. No city, no culture can outlast the earth that feeds it. In the windswept ruins of Kalibangan, silence reigns. But beneath that silence lies the ghostly hum of a once living city, a place where fire altars burned, markets bustled, and artisans' hands shaped beauty from stone, clay, and metal. Archaeology gives us fragments, but through those fragments the people begin to take form. They were master craftsmen. In tiny workshops, artisans sat cross-legged for hours, grinding and drilling carnelian, a deep red gemstone, into perfectly uniform beads. The precision is astonishing, holes so fine that even modern tools struggle to replicate them. Each bead took patience, skill, and generational knowledge. Apprentices learning from masters, fathers teaching children. These beads weren't just ornaments. They were passports to distant worlds. Kalibangan's carnelian reached Mesopotamia, traded for copper, lapis lazuli, or textiles, linking the city to an international network stretching from the Persian Gulf to the Indus Delta. Other hands molded clay into vessels of remarkable symmetry and design. Kalibangan's pottery reveals both artistry and science, geometric patterns, animal motifs, and the distinctive Kalibangan red ware, fired at carefully controlled temperatures. Each pot was both utilitarian and expressive, carrying the fingerprints of its maker across 4,000 years. Nearby, copper chisels, bronze tools, and terracotta toys emerge from the dust. A world both industrial and domestic, sacred and mundane. From standardized stone weights to uniformly sized bricks, everything in Kalibangan speaks of order and precision. This standardization hints at something profound, a shared system of value, a collective agreement about how the world should be measured and built. Was it imposed by rulers or maintained through cultural consensus? The evidence suggests the latter. Unlike the kingdoms of Mesopotamia or Egypt, there are no grand palaces or monumental statues here, no signs of absolute kingship or coercive authority. Instead, the Indus world may have thrived on an astonishing degree of civic cooperation and shared identity, a kind of urban democracy before the concept had a name. But even amid such sophistication, there were everyday lives, children laughing as they rolled terracotta toy carts with movable wheels, merchants loading caravans with goods bound for faraway cities, farmers returning from the fields as the evening fires were lit. Each artifact is a whisper from one of these lives: the bead maker, the potter, the trader, the mother, the child. And then, as suddenly as they appear in history, they vanish. Around 1900 BCE, the workshops go silent. The tools are left where they last fell. The trade routes crumble. The people of Kalibangan, so skilled, so interconnected, disappear into the sands of time. Were they the ancestors of later Dravidian-speaking peoples? Did they merge with migrating Indo-Aryans? Or did they simply fade away, their language, faith, and faces erased by centuries of silence? We can hold what they made, trace their streets, even recreate their craft, but we cannot hear their voices. Kalibangan's people remind us of civilization's most poignant truth, that even the most advanced societies are only as enduring as their memory. The story of Kalibangan does not end with fire or flood. It ends with silence. Beneath the shifting sands of Rajasthan lie the remnants of a city that once thrummed with life, now empty, its streets deserted, its workshops cold. Archaeology reveals a city abandoned, not destroyed. Its departure is written in the stratigraphy, two distinct cultural phases, the early pre-Harappan foundations giving way to the later mature Harappan urban splendor, separated by pauses of human absence. And then, around 1900 BCE, the final departure. Kalibangan was emptied, never to be reoccupied as a major urban center. The reasons remain a matter of debate, each theory adding its own weight to the mystery. The most widely accepted involves environmental catastrophe. The Gagar Hakra, the river that had nourished fields and sustained life, gradually dried. Without water, crops failed. Fertile land turned to dust. Families that had tended these soils for generations found the foundation of their existence disappearing beneath their feet, forcing them to seek sustenance elsewhere. This was no single disaster, but a slow unraveling, measured in decades, perhaps centuries. A slow-motion exodus dictated by the rhythm of nature. Climate change compounds the tragedy. Paleoclimatic studies show a weakening monsoon across northwestern India at the same time, reducing rainfall and river flows. Across the Indus Valley, urban centers were stressed simultaneously, suggesting that Kalibangan's abandonment was part of a broader civilizational crisis. Tectonic activity may have played a role as well, subtly shifting the landscape, altering river courses, and cutting off water supplies in a manner that human ingenuity alone could not remedy. Some have speculated on conflict or invasion, though evidence for warfare is scant. The city shows no signs of mass slaughter or destruction. Its walls stand, its houses intact, silent witnesses to human withdrawal rather than violent conquest. It seems that the people left deliberately, carrying what they could, leaving behind the infrastructure and monuments of their civilization, trusting perhaps that the desert might yield again someday, or resigned to the impossibility of return. Imagine being among the last inhabitants, walking the wide streets for the final time, seeing your city emptied block by block. Pottery and tools left where they had been used for generations, fire altars extinguished, workshops abandoned, courtyards swept clean but no longer echoing with children's laughter. The grief would have been immense, not merely for loss of home, but for the erasure of a way of life, knowledge systems, social networks, and cultural memory cultivated over centuries. Every step carried the weight of leaving behind not just material possessions, but identity itself. Kalibangan was not frozen like Pompeii in the sudden grip of disaster. It was slowly surrendered, evacuated in the face of imperceptible but unstoppable forces, nature's quiet insistence. Its people vanished with intention, perhaps hope, perhaps resignation, leaving behind a city that would be swallowed by sand, remembered only in fragments, whispers, and the awe of those who would come millennia later to uncover it. The city died, not with fire or sword, but with the quiet, heartbreaking inevitability of time and circumstance. a civilization's heartbeat, fading into silence. Kalibangan whispers across millennia, a testament to both human ingenuity and the fragility of civilization. Its streets, once orderly and alive, now lie buried beneath sand. But their lessons remain strikingly relevant. Even the most meticulously planned, technologically advanced, and economically integrated societies are vulnerable to forces beyond their control. The drying of rivers, shifts in climate, or subtle environmental changes can dismantle urban life, no matter how sophisticated, no matter how enduring it seems. In this way, Kalibangan speaks directly to our contemporary moment, reminding us that mastery over our surroundings is never absolute. Yet Kalibangan also reminds us of the profound limits of knowledge. Decades of excavation have peeled back layers of earth, revealing fire altars, plowed fields, streets of perfect symmetry, and artifacts of breathtaking craftsmanship. But so much remains unread. Its script resists translation. Its abandonment is only partially understood. Its spiritual life is glimpsed, not known. History, it seems, is defined more by silence than by certainty. Much of humanity's past is lost to time, and Kalibangan exemplifies the tantalizing incompleteness of the record. And still, what we do know is extraordinary. 4.5 millennia ago, in a landscape now considered remote and marginal, people built cities of remarkable sophistication. They developed agricultural systems precise enough to sustain large populations. They designed ritual landscapes, suggesting complex spiritual and social structures. They engaged in trade that spanned continents, all without written proclamations of power, without monuments glorifying rulers. Their lives, their achievements, and even their very identities now survive only as material traces. Silent, enigmatic, and compelling. Kalibangan teaches us that human aspiration stretches far deeper into the past than we often acknowledge. Civilizations rise and fall, leaving barely a trace, and what we remember is only a fraction of what was once lived, created, and dreamed. Every brick, every bead, every furrowed field speaks to ingenuity, hope, and perseverance, and to the fragile impermanence that shadows all human endeavor. And yet, Kalibangan is not done speaking. Vast portions remain unexcavated. New methods, interdisciplinary approaches combining archaeology with genetics, climate science, and linguistic study promise to illuminate facets of life and death here that we have not yet imagined. Its secrets await future explorers, ready to challenge assumptions and deepen our understanding of what it means to build, to live, and to vanish. If this journey into Kalibangan's mysteries has captivated you, if you're hungry to explore more forgotten civilizations and archaeological enigmas that challenge our understanding of human history, subscribe to this channel and join a community of curious minds unafraid to confront the profound mysteries of our shared past. Because history isn't dead facts. It's living questions waiting for passionate explorers to pursue them. What other ancient sites should we investigate next? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's continue uncovering humanity's hidden stories together.